And we're very happy to welcome to Seacoast Currents Rich Clark, who is a local attorney and candidate for county attorney in Rockingham County. Good morning, Rich.
Morning.
It's great to have you with us here. I've been seeing your posters for attorney all over the place, and it's nice to finally meet you after seeing your face on these big posters. And you have decided to run for county attorney in Rockingham County. I'm sure there's a story here about why you considered running for this office.
Yes, there is.
Why don't you tell us just kind of in general why you would be interested in this position?
In general, it would. I don't think that we have leadership in the Rockingham County Attorney's Office that's ethical. So to me, it's a public service position, and that's the reason I want it. You know, I find that prosecutors and county attorneys are similar to judges, and after practicing law for 15 years, there's two types of judges. There are those that are there for the power, and there are judges that are there for public service and to help our community. And I realized in time that the prosecutors are very similar to those two to judges, and I think that the one that we have in our county now is there more for the power rather than the public good. And that's, on a broad sense, what I would bring is, rather than taking the position for power, it would be more to help our community.
You have a personal reason for running against the incumbent Rockingham County Attorney, and would you like to explain that situation? I believe that was something that happened in your life, personal event.
Yeah, so politics for me, I didn't have an interest to the capacity that I do now, or to be, personally running for position. My experience with the Rockingham County Attorney, its leadership through Pat Conway, who is the present Rockingham County Attorney, I found personally that she had run, or that she's there not for the better good of our community. And in my instance, I'll tell you the abbreviated story of what happened to me and my personal connections with our present Rockingham County Attorney, and how it can affect, how it affected me, my son, our family, and how it could affect anybody in our county. So in 2019, I had filed for divorce, and during that process, I got into a custody battle with my son, where my now ex-wife was precluding me from having any contact with my now 14-year-old son. And I remember the first time DCYF, that's the people that oversee the children in our state, the state entity, if there's a complaint. Well, they came to my house and they were knocking on the door, and they said, "We had a complaint that you're not feeding your son." And at the time, my son was overweight, so it was just a shock to me that they were there anyway, but it really wasn't a total surprise. So they came through, and they would look through, your fridge and your cupboards, and they said, "Okay, well, we don't have any issue here." So they left. Well, this is very common because I practice family law as well, but if there's a custody battle and one allegation doesn't work, then you step it up and you make another one that's worse. So within a short period of 2 weeks, I think I had half a dozen calls and multiple visits from DCYF. We had both, a lot of allegations that were false through family court, but each one that didn't work, there was a step up. And ultimately, there were allegations that I physically abused my son, which were totally false. That was denied in court, and 40 minutes later, my now ex-wife presented to the Portsmouth police station and said that I sexually abused him, which was also totally false. So how did this become personal to me and relative to my run for the county attorney's office? Well, Portsmouth Police Department they went to file an arrest warrant for me, which landed in front of Portsmouth District Court. That was denied. So a court determined there's no probable cause, and I'm thinking, okay, well, the common sense applied here, we're good. Well, that didn't happen because through Pat Conway's leadership, her office indicted me for the same thing. And that I've researched, over 2 years and never seen a case where that's happened to anybody, where a court determines there's no probable cause and denies the arrest warrant, yet the county attorney's office turns around and indicts somebody. I'm the only case I know that's happened to. And to me, it's totally wrong. So I spent a remarkable amount of time researching our state's laws relative to grand juries and that type of review. And what amazed me is that we can do that in New Hampshire, which I think shouldn't be the case. The other thing that I think is more amazing and shocking to me is that these facts are presented to a grand jury. These are common citizens. Yet the problem that I have is we don't have the right to the county attorneys don't have the burden to be transparent with a grand jury, so they can hide facts and just present their case and not give the trier of fact, the grand jury, all the facts. And that makes us, as county attorneys, it's not acceptable. It's totally wrong. You have to give the full story. So, the goal is for me to do that through the legislature, because if I'm there and I try to do things ethically, which aren't happening now, when I'm gone, the next person can do what they want. So the only way to change it is by using the legislature to enact law to force people to do this, to act ethically. Ultimately what happened was, for 1 year and 11 months, I had no contact with my son. I couldn't even give a text message or nothing. And during that time, Pat Conway, who's our county attorney now, she had noticed that DCYF had found that my case lacked merit, that they closed the case against me, that they made a formal finding that the allegations were unfounded.
She didn't know that when she indicted you?
She knew they knew that the Portsmouth District Court had denied the arrest warrant, but there were so many facts that were given to her because the county attorney's office had an open review of my divorce file. So the common sense part applied and was there. And so she had this notice and allowed it to go on for, I think, another 7 months after. So that is the problem that I have, and that's my personal reason in running, is because I know how wrong the leadership there is, and that it needs to be changed. There's only Pat Conway and I that are running, just the two of us. So it's not a real sexy position. It's not something that, it's not like the governor or the executive council. It's on the lower level of politics. So, but I'm so driven to change what's going on here because it's really disgusting. I can't put it any other way.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of years ago, we had a guest on the show who was also running against Pat Conway, who had a number of horror stories to tell as well. So I don't think you've discovered something on a personal basis that I think has happened to other folks. So I'm sorry that had to happen to you. It sounds absolutely horrible. And it must have been awful for your son as well. How did you get the whole thing resolved?
So as a child, my son, what a degree of respect I have to give that young gentleman. He had the courage to go and tell the truth, and that this whole thing was made up. And I respect him so much for that, because as a child, to have to go through that and to have that strength, it's remarkable. And he made the choice that he wanted to live with me, and for the past year, he's lived with me exclusively. And I fault Pat Conway for putting him in that position and taking him away from me for 1 year and 11 months. Every day that I would wake up, I would think about him, and I just don't want others to go through it. And as I've been campaigning for this position, other people have reached out to me with similar stories. And I knew I wasn't the only one, but a lot of people, they don't want to talk about it. They want to forget that it's happened. But, for me, I want to be transparent with everyone in what happened to me, because I feel that's exactly how I got in that position. Was I think that we lack transparency in Rockingham County with the grand jury, and we've got a lot of problems here that and with things that need to be changed.
I served on a grand jury once, yeah, and I came away with the thought of this that it's an odd institution, and as they say, you can indict a ham sandwich, and that's exactly how I felt after serving on the grand jury for a couple days. One side is presented, and that's about it, and there's no oversight, it seems to me. So I would definitely support some reform in that department. And is that what you are kind of looking to do as a county attorney?
It is. The grand jury process is how, in the county attorneys, it's one of the key methods that initiates a case. It's very early on, and to be so broken and corrupt from the beginning, and so outdated. That process probably goes back to when law started here in the United States, and it hasn't been changed. And a lot of things in our court system need to be reformed here in New Hampshire, and nobody wants to step up to the plate to do it. And I can tell you that a lot of attorneys that I've discussed this with, they tell me, Rich, if you start doing this and pushing this issue, they're going to take your law license from you. And that's the risk that I'm going to take. And I've been very vocal about a lot of the changes that are very basic that affect all of us. For example, many of those that are in family court should be changed, and they're very basic. And at the end of the day, a lot of these changes reduce the need for attorneys, and that's why they feel that there's a major conflict in the basic changes that I would want to enact. Is if that's done, would it affect the attorney's fees? It without a doubt it will, and it'll also minimize the acrimony between a lot of the parties, the litigants, and it would also streamline things substantially. But that's the goal. We'll see where I get.
Well, yeah, I know. I think a kind of a walk through the court system, the justice system, can seem pretty Kafkaesque to folks, and it sounds like you kind of went through a situation like that yourself, just caught in this thing that had a life of its own and was in danger of taking over your life.
Unfortunately, I'm a lawyer, so if those people weren't to have to try to attempt what I have, I don't know how somebody could have done it or how they could have afforded to do it. But I'm here, I fought the process, and ultimately I prevailed at the detriment of really my son more than anything. But I feel that we achieved success and at cost, and I don't want that to have to happen to anyone else here in our county, and any families and any children. That's what I'm here to change. How's
your son doing now?
He's very good. We did a little trip to Iceland this summer, and that was a lot of fun. We do father-son getaways. I also have a 2-year-old, so I make sure that this is his half-brother, so I have to make sure that my older son knows how important he is. When you blend these families, which are common after a divorce process, I've learned that you have to always make sure that everybody knows how much you love them individually.
Indeed. What does exactly the county attorney do? What would be your job if you become county attorney?
So the county attorneys prosecutes the higher level crimes, all felony level crimes. So those that are serious misdemeanor crimes are in district court. Felony level go to the superior court, and that's what the Rockingham County Attorney's Office oversees and prosecutes. And that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So they also work with local police departments. They advise them on different issues of law, what they can or can't do, that type of work.
Well, now that certain decisions have been passed down from the Supreme Court to the states, I think more and more our state officials have become important. And your website says that you are an advocate for women's rights and racial equality and the LGBTQ community. Can you kind of go into detail about how you want to advocate for those groups?
So those groups, I think the easiest one, the racial equality. My father was in the Navy, and he met my mother in Japan. He didn't speak any Japanese, and nor did she speak any English, but they ended up getting married. So I'm half Japanese, which is very unusual here in the Seacoast. As a practicing attorney here, the only other one I know that's has a Japanese background is Judge Gardner, who originated from Portsmouth. I think she's up in Rochester now. But we have a very small Asian crew here in the Seacoast. I think it's 4% white, the population in New Hampshire. So that's why the racial equality part is personal to me. The women's rights, it's kind of a hot button, so I'll be careful how I approach that. But I feel that a lot of those rights have been taken away, and not really at a good time. We're in a political area where we've seen a lot, and I think the timing wasn't. It shouldn't have happened anyway. But of all times, it just didn't create a lot of harmony here in our nation, and I think it was something that should have just been left as it was. And I think that I don't like anybody telling me what to do, and I'm just in shock that a government can now tell relative to a female what they can do with her body, and it's disappointing. And the last part was, I forgot.
LGBTQ community.
Oh, that I have a lot of friends that are gay, and they talk to me and they tell me about things that they've gone through, and I empathize with them, and I think that they have fought to bring this to light, and that I support them without any reservation. And I remember even as a kid in high school, gosh, it's amazing to think how long ago that's been now, but the thought process about that was very different, wasn't it? How times have changed.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
It's huge. I think huge strides have been made. There are still many to move. I feel recently we've taken a step backwards.
With everything.
With everything, yes, indeed. So we can't get complacent with any of these issues.
And that also relates to with the Roe v. Wade decision. Are they going to be able to take the rights away from civil unions? Is that a possibility? Absolutely. I think we're all shocked with what happened, and can that happen? That could.
Well, I think one of the Supreme Court justices was quite open recently and said, yeah, this will affect all kinds of things like contraception. Mm-hmm. And marriage equality, and so this was a huge decision. We have yet to actually see all the repercussions, I think, from this decision. I understand that you feel careful about addressing these. Larry and I talk about these issues all the time on the radio, and are quite vocal about how we feel about them. And and I think if there was, if men were somehow denied an important medical procedure that would affect their health and their life and their family and their economic status and everything, I think we'd hear a great big outroar.
Oh, there's no doubt.
So again, and what's happened, I think it was the local Republican city committee chairman wrote an op-ed in the local newspaper that said, something about this was overturning Roe v. Wade was a good idea because it now puts the decision where it belongs, down in the states. And I'm going, look, if we're trying to get closer to a person, why don't we just give the decision to the individual? I mean, why the state? Why not the county? Why not the town? Why not the woman herself? So, I mean, it's kind of the logical thought process coming out of that op-ed from him. But, I could go on forever, Rich, but we want to talk about you. Tell us about your law practice. I checked out the website, and you do so many different kinds of laws. Not just family law, but you do criminal defense, and you do personal injury. Tell us about your law practice.
So my law practice is I'm a general practitioner, so I do all areas of law. And so I do a lot of family law. I have over the years. That's primarily divorce. Unfortunately, one out of two of us ends up with one of those. That relates to the criminal aspect, the criminal defense, or our criminal court, because they can be very intertwined. Well, I'm an example myself. You've seen, in my instance, how I went through a divorce and how I had was involved in the criminal court personally. A lot of prosecutors, they're not experienced, and they have no experience in I don't know any prosecutor that has experience in the family court system, so they don't know how one relates to the other and how that comes about. Well, as it did in my case, generally through children, through custody, because if you make an allegation of abuse or neglect or anything, the other parent can try to get primary custody, and that affects child support and money payments for quite a few things. So they are intertwined, and the prosecutors don't have the experience to review the facts and to know what's going on and the timing, as a family attorney that has experience would know. And I try to educate quite a few of the prosecutors on what's happening so they know and how it relates, and they don't know because it's just too much to explain in a case, and they don't want to hear it.
And this is actually something you could do as county attorney. You could have a little bit more influence over that, and maybe educate other attorneys about how these different areas of law kind of intersect.
They do. I would say most of those that I deal with, they do need some type of education, and I think that should be required as prosecutors, whether you're on the county attorney level or like a small town here in New Hampshire. I think that they need to have that experience, and there's been a lot of litigation recently on the experience of public defenders and prosecutors. And I think there's a case that just went through in Maine, was similarly where they felt that that one was where the public defenders were not educated and trained enough. So it's common, and it's common right to our abutting states here.
Would you have to give up your law practice if you became county attorney?
It's, to me, I would. I would, because I think that the effort that I would be putting in at the county attorney's office, along with that I would use that influence to draft legislation to change things. So whether it was on a 2-year basis, a 4-year basis, or if I had 2 terms, an 8-year, I would. It's a personal sacrifice that I would be happy to make.
I wanted to ask you about what was the reason for you taking up the law? Why did you go to law school? Was there something that in you that felt this is a way to really change the world, or you liked watching LA Law, or I don't know, whatever?
That's interesting. You asked that. In in high school, you get yearbooks and it says, what do you want to do for a future career? Well, they don't do that anymore. I looked at my girlfriend's daughter's yearbook, and it doesn't have that. Do you guys remember that? Where it would say, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
So oddly, for mine, I had that I wanted to do federal law enforcement or to be a lawyer. Right?
And you were, 17 when you said that?
Yeah. So back then I knew what I wanted to do. And I'm just amazed. And I wish they still had that, because I'd be curious to see, like, my son's yearbook, what he says he wants to do, whether he's going to do it or not. But that interest was very early. And oddly, what really compelled me to do it was a personal thing, too. I was involved as an 18-year-old in litigating a case that was an interesting one, and that's what compelled me to continue my slow progress towards...
You litigated a case when you were 18?
Yeah, I actually sued UNH for breach of contract, which was on a total principal issue. We had an agreement that so let's say if you transfer, I was going to the VOTEC in Stratham. I don't know if anybody remembers that. It's been a while, but I transferred from the VOTEC in Stratham to UNH, and during that time, this was now 25 years ago. If you had a class that you took that was similar and you had a C or above, the professor at UNH or T School signed off on it, the Thompson School at UNH, and the business manager signed off on it, then it would transfer in at 100%. Well, I had all that done, and then at one point they changed it so that I was only going to get 60%. And I felt totally wronged, and that's why I went after him as a little kid. And I remember sitting there, and there was me as an 18-year-old, and next to the bench, the opposing side, there were, I think, 2 attorneys, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's 4 adults over there, and I was so scared. But I was so determined.
Did you win your case?
I did. Yeah.
And that started you in your career.
It did.
Wonderful. That's a great story. Yeah. We're speaking with Rich Clark this morning. He is an attorney here in the area, and now a candidate for county attorney in Rockingham County. Did you like law school? I mean, I've talked to people who didn't like law school, but and then I know folks who just loved every minute of it.
Law school was very interesting. I was a non-traditional student. I worked full time. I had a lawn sprinkler company, so I would go to people's homes and install lawn sprinkler systems, and then in the evenings and weekends I would go to law school. And almost all the students were non-traditional, so I think the average age was around 40, all working. They all had families. A lot of the women that were students there had kids, and they were working, and it was so the non-traditional school that I was in, and if you didn't respect the other students for what they were going through, or you did, it was... The nice thing about law school was, even if you don't become an attorney, it gives you a different way to think about the facts and assess a situation. That's what I really enjoyed about it. The first year was the toughest because I didn't read a lot. I like to watch TV and listen to radio, but there you read a lot. And I read more in that first year than I did my entire undergrad. That gives you an idea how much reading you do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a good process.
I've talked to lawyers who think everybody should go to law school, just regardless, like what you said, regardless of wanting to become a lawyer. It just gives you a really good way of thinking and organizing thoughts and learning civics. I mean, we don't learn civics anymore. I mean, I think everyone could use a really good class in constitutional law.
All these days.
Especially now, exactly. We could all use that.
I think the Supreme Court could use a little refresher themselves.
Oh, all those years we heard about activist judges. Well, now we're really seeing it. Can you... besides just your bad experience with this county attorney, the incumbent that we have now, I mean, are there other reasons why do you think that Pat Conway it should maybe be retired or not reelected?
Well, there was quite a few articles that I had read about. I think one of them was through NPR that was published about Pat Conway. And, it surprises me that the people even voted her in after knowing what happened. And this is going by memory here, recalling this. I believe it was through NPR, but it had talked about an investigation that was done. And at the time, Pat Conway was working for the Rockingham County Attorney, Jim Reams. Well, the Attorney General's office got a call, and the call was from, I believe, a gentleman named Jerome Blanchard, who was another county attorney working in the office with the two of them, meaning Pat and Jim, her boss. And that call said that Pat's name was being Pat's husband was a Salem police officer whose name was being removed from the Lori list, which is also the bad cop list. And that was being done by Pat's boss, Jim Reams. Well, the AG's office investigated it, and Pat Conway's husband's name was removed from the Lori list. And that, along with a few other things, the AG's put some pressure on him, and he resigned. Well, who ran after Jim Reams resigned was Pat Conway. And to me, it's amazing that the people voted her in. And I think, like I said, this is the least sexy of the positions of any political spot in Rockingham County. And maybe the people just didn't know. But that, and I also believe in term limits. And I think that should happen here with judges in New Hampshire as well, because of a lot of the things that I've seen. If that had happened and we had term limits here, it limits that good old boy network, where you can call and make another call and talk to someone else and say, hey, can we do this? And let's get rid of the bad cop list for Pat Conway's husband. And, if we had term limits, that abuse of power wouldn't be so likely to happen. And to me, that's why I've always advocated for term limits. And, the goal is when I get in 2 terms, which is 8 years. It used to be 2 years, and that legislature just changed it to 4. And I think that, that if somebody were only in there for 2 terms, then they couldn't feel so comfortable to do something like that. And to me, that's corrupt to do it. But, that it wasn't done. So the people voted Pat Conway in, which is kind of shocking. And what happens after that is she walks into office. This is according to another article that I read online. So have I talked to Jerome Blanchard, the whistleblower, personally? No, I haven't. And, I haven't called him because when we do these deals in New Hampshire, we're allowed to do this. Deals meaning, I'll explain. So the day that Pat walks into office, according to this article, she fires the whistleblower, Jerome Blanchard. Jerome's intent was to do what was right, and yet he gets fired. And, this is a gentleman that I have a lot of respect for, because he was standing up to what was wrong, and he gets terminated. Well, I guess, according to this article, he's probably didn't like that. And I think there was a lawsuit or some litigation ensued of some sort. And there was a payment made to Attorney Blanchard for $80,000. And this is what I don't like. And another issue we have with our state is a lot of these agreements, when they're inked, they have a confidentiality clause in a non-disclosure portion where that can't be given and disclosed to anybody. But in my opinion, it's a public issue, so that should have been disclosed on what that payment was for. But we're good at hiding things in the law system. So my thoughts is she should not have been there anyway. And what happened to me after I read about her background, that's when I realized this is no surprise based on her character and what I'm seeing. And she really needs to be removed from power. We've had some other good candidates that haven't made it. We had Bryden. He ran against her, didn't make it. Grosky was another one. I know him personally through a few cases. Very gentleman. He didn't make it. And then we had Joe Playa, another gentleman. Oddly, we were coming here to the office today, and there was a license plate in front of us that said Playa, and I was wondering if that was him. But
I think it was a Cadillac.
Yeah,
I think that's Joe's.
Oh, really?
Joe's car. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a Cadillac. Boy, how'd you know that?
Well, I know Joe.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I see him at the gym all the time, and whenever he's there,
oh man, that's
that
awesome.
Cadillac with Playa is in the parking lot. So yeah. Joe ran for that.
And he's a good guy. And,
yeah, definitely.
And that's what surprises me is we have these good candidates and better quality people, people with that have a true heart that would be there for public service as opposed for a power run. And how is it that somebody doesn't replace her? That's what's shocking to me. So I'm trying to do everything I can to do that, to get rid of her, to improve our our community here. That's what it's about. If we can get rid of judges, prosecutors, those that are in authority, that are there desiring just the power as opposed to public good, that's what we need. And I think that's what we need on the level, through politics throughout.
Yeah. I just want to express my support for whistleblowers. I mean, because they take a big risk when they come forward, and it often does not work well for them, and they end up being in a lot worse position than they were. And I've seen it locally here in Portsmouth, and I hear about it all the time, that anybody who blows the whistle on someone can often take that hit. So it must have taken a lot of courage for someone to stand up and make that case.
When I started running for this office, I have people that have gotten a hold of me that say that their attorney was Jerome Blanchard, and that he's doing well. So that I like hearing. And those people were reaching out to me because they had similar stories to mine, and they had to hire an attorney. And I'm thankful. Who did they hire? They hired him. After knowing what Pat Conway did to Jerome Blanchard. Our county is spending, I don't know if anybody's aware of this, it seems like it's kind of not really publicized much, but we're spending $68 million on a new Rockingham County complex, which will house the Rockingham County Attorney's office, I believe the Registry of Deeds, and the Sheriff's office. The Sheriff's office should have been replaced like maybe 100 years ago. That building is so old, and they're cramped in there like little animals. It's terrible what they do to them. All right. I'm just surprised it rose to $68 million. It was $50 million a couple of years ago. So the county attorney's is going to be housed in this new building as well. It must have like marble floors in there and a big logo like they would in California. I imagine this real sleek building. But I think that they should name the county attorney's office, I think they should call it the Jerome Blanchard building. And I do, and I'm not mocking Pat Conway, but I think they should name it the Jerome Blanchard building, because what he did, he had the courage to stand up to what was wrong. And it would be a reminder to all county attorneys that work in that office on how you try to do what's right, as he did. That's my thoughts. Can I make that decision on my own? No. But if anybody knows anyone out there that has that influence, I really think that would be an honor for him, and a reminder to all the county attorneys to be honest and transparent, and to be better. And that's what we need here.
Let's get personal. It says in your website that you like traveling and antiques and cooking and weightlifting, and so you've got all kinds of various interests. Where do you like to travel?
So my favorite is to travel overseas. My father used to take us over at Pease. They have the New Hampshire National Guard. So my father's retired military, and so how did this start for me? Well, we didn't have much money, right? But my father was retired from the service, so we could go over to Pease through the New Hampshire National Guard, and you can fly in their planes. And for I think it was $5, or maybe it's free now, you could fly to wherever they were going. Isn't that awesome?
That is amazing.
So we went to Hawaii, England, Spain, I think Gibraltar, the Azores Islands. We went all over the world through the New Hampshire National Guard.
Wow.
And they have tankers over there that refuel jets in midair. And as a kid, back then they had a system where you would lie down and you could watch one of the personnel fuel midair these fighter jets, and how cool is that? But that's why traveling became such a desire and a normal thing for me, because we would go all the time.
I had no idea. And this is for military people can
Yes.
fly. Wow.
Yep. So Dad was in the Navy originally, and then he retired Army as a warrant officer.
Oh.
So I still say sir sometimes. Yes, sir. So if Dad's ever upset, it's never just a yes. It's yes, sir.
Did you ever go back to Japan and meet your mother's family?
We lived in Japan for 7 years. We stayed in. Dad was in the Navy or in the Army at the time, and we stayed in Camp Sama, and Yokosuka was a very large naval base. We stayed there too. Sagami Depot. These are military bases there. But I haven't been back now. It's been, I bet 30 years. But the Japanese people, they love Americans. I mean, they're a real strong ally of ours, but just very kind, reserved people. And you go to these different countries, and all people have a different feel. And that's what I enjoy. Is like my dad's taught me this. We go to the grocery stores and you hang out where they do, and you can really feel the people. And the most recent trip was Iceland, and they were among some of the nicest people that I've ever met. Yeah. Have you ever been there?
Yes, I have.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Weren't they nice people?
Yes, they're lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was such an easy, stress-free trip. And when were you there?
It's been about 8 years, I'd say.
So now, if you go to, is it Reykjavik? Is that how you say
Reykjavik.
Reykjavik.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So when you're in the capital, you can rent these scooters that you stand on, and that's how you get around. Did they have those then?
No.
Yeah. So they're totally electric, and you can go throughout the whole town, and you just park it, and someone else might take that one, but you go to this app and it'll show you where all the other ones are. It was what a nice time.
Yeah. And how about cooking? You like to cook?
So cooking, for many years I cooked a lot, and now my girlfriend, who I've been with for 3 years, we have the 2-year-old son. Her mother lives with us, and the mom is my girlfriend's family. They're from the Ukraine, so my cooking has been a little less in the last year.
But you've been eating well, I have no doubt.
Yeah, I've gained 25 pounds in the last year. And they eat this soup. It's called borscht, and I don't know if you know what borscht is.
Yes, it's beet soup.
So I eat a lot of borscht. The first time I had it, I'm like, I don't know about this beet stuff. It tastes really kind of earthy, like tree bark or something.
It does taste like dirt.
It does. It tastes like dirt. That's what it does. But after that, I've come to like it, and it's a real red soup. So it is a pretty soup, just looking at it. But it's grown on me, and now I like it. So yeah. I found that I like the Ukrainian food because I've gained a lot of weight.
Well, that's great. Yeah. I have a really good borscht recipe that I just make a big batch and then live off it for a week. But yeah, that's good hearty soup. Yeah, and if you cook it right, it doesn't taste like dirt. So, as I'm sure you've figured out.
Yeah, it's good.
Now, do you speak any Japanese?
I used to speak it fluently. Now it's broken. It's strange. If somebody is standing next to me and they're speaking Japanese, I can't tell you word for word what they're saying, but I can give you the gist of the conversation. But then I can't turn around and talk to them in the same capacity. But I'm able to understand it. It's odd.
That's the difference between passive and active. And yeah, I know. getting a language passively is easy. You can understand it and everything, but then actively responding is always a lot harder.
My mother would speak Japanese to us, and at that time I was, she's unfortunately since passed away, but when she was around, I always had refreshers because if we didn't have a choice.
Exactly. So, do you lift weights? I mean, how heavy? How much can you lift?
So it's funny. Jason Landry, who's my campaign manager, and I have been friends since we were like 17. So the poor guy, over 30 years, he hasn't figured it out yet. Don't tell him. But
just between you and me.
Yeah. But Jason used to drive me to bench press meets when we were in high school, and I used to compete in bench pressing. And what was odd was I weighed 148 pounds, and I officially bench pressed 320, which is really unusual. I've never met anyone that weighed that little that could bench press that much. But this is going back 30 years now.
Wow.
So now I'm lucky enough to have a pretty formal gym in our basement, so I just go down there and work out. And what's cool is my son, he started working out with me too, so I noticed that's a different trend with the younger people. He will only work out with these earpods, whatever they're called. But so yeah, right at home is where I work out. It's great.
Yeah, nice. That's great. Have you had any interesting? What's like the most interesting case you had as an attorney?
I have a lot of them, and as far as the most interesting, I think that people go through. There isn't like a certain one case. I've had some victories that pay a lot of money. Those could be injury cases. And what do you get out of those? You might get a new car or a new tractor, once you make the money. But I think that the interesting cases and those that mean a lot to me, I find that a lot of the things that I do, people go through personal hardship, and that could be, major the things that are very traumatic in their lives, on a personal level, whatever it is. And when people are in that position, they're very, what's the word I'm looking for? Where it shows who they are. And, what amazes me is I represent these people, and I see like who they really are. I must be like a therapist times 10, with no, I can just see the individual, and that's the part that I like, is they can be in, some of these people just shine through, and no matter what they're going through, they can still keep their integrity, and they're just, that's the part that I love.
We're running out of time, Rich.
Yep.
And I just wanted to give you the last few minutes. You can kind of talk to our listeners about why they should consider you for Rockingham County Attorney.
So, if I have 2 minutes, what I would tell you is the person that's there now should have never been there. And what I am is, my goal is to make sure that type of behavior doesn't continue in our county, and I am here to remove it. And I will also assure you that I will use the legislature. Not only will I do the position and do it ethically and try to do what's right for our families here, but I would also work with the legislature to make sure that our county attorneys in the entire state are required to be transparent with grand juries, that they are required to be ethical, very basic standards that we don't have here. That is the goal in a nutshell of what I would do, and how my leadership here would be very different from what I've experienced. And you could find more about me. It's Clark, C-L-A-R-K, and then the number 4, justice.com. So Clark4justice.com. More about me is there. You can find my cell numbers even there. You can call me. You're welcome. I think it's right on that site. it's just it's very personal to me, and from what happened, and that is driving me to change quite a bit in our system here, and it needs to happen.
Rich, I have your RAC card, your kind of campaign card here in my hand, and there is a lovely picture of you and your two boys. It just makes me smile. You and your older boy just look so happy, and of course the 2-year-old is like, "What are we doing here?
Yes.
What are you making me do?" It's great. No, you look like a lovely family, and it's been wonderful to meet you, and I wish you all the best and good luck in your election.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
We've been talking to Rich Clark, attorney, and now candidate for Rockingham County Attorney. We'll be right back after a short musical break with the second half of Seacoast Currents.